So one of the foundational elements that needs to be in a relationship that really is the make or break is, do I like this person? And if I don't like this person, if my dislike is starting to increase, then what happens is I start to get resentful of them. And as soon as resentment comes in, it really is a downhill slide from there.
Welcome back to another episode of the Monarch Social Podcast, where we discuss all things digital media marketing.
Yes, sir, and hopes to give you, the viewers at home, a little bit of insight into this digital world which we all live in.
And I am super excited today because we have Kathrine Parnell here, originally from Arroyo Grande, California,
Yes.
where she graduated from California State in Bakersfield, right?
Nice.
Eventually moves to Utah, and you started your practice, I want to say, in 2015? October?
Yes, around 2000, yes. Around
Perfect.
2014, 15, yes.
Heck yeah. And she is the owner and clinical director of a New View Counseling Center.
A New View Counseling and Psychological Services.
I was so close. I was so close.
There we
It's
go.
a long name.
So my first question is welcome to the show, obviously.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. My number one question is that we're super interested in like the psychology and the therapist part of things. Mm-hmm. But how did you choose that, like, growing up? Did you always know that you wanted to be a therapist?
No, not at all. I think it's often said that the profession chooses you.
Okay.
And so as I was growing up, my dream was to become a physician. And so I graduated high school and was successful in school and really didn't have any reason to doubt that I couldn't do it. And so I started just undergrad, just started taking general classes. And I took human anatomy. And for the first time in my life, did not get a passing grade on a test.
Oh, no.
And
really?
it crushed me. In fact, the story that I tell was that the professor wrote on the test in big red print. So really getting my attention, it said, "Get serious, Kathrine."
Wow.
And
That's a harsh little comment.
Yeah, it choked me up. And then, of course, there was labs that I was doing that I thought I was going to pass out because of the formaldehyde and things like that. So
Oh, yeah.
I quickly realized this is not the course that I want to be on. And I saw an advertisement at the college that was talking about human services. And it grabbed my attention. And I thought, I like this, let me try this out. And so started in that program and ended up getting my bachelor's and then moving on.
Nice.
Awesome.
Very, very cool.
When you were going to school and everything, and as you were graduating through that, was there a specific type of counseling that was drawn to you more than others? Was it like therapy or what's it called, relationship therapy, or was there a type of counseling that you were like, this is my calling, this is what I do?
Yeah, because there's like a ton of different types of counseling.
There are. No, so even as I was going through my master's program and getting my master's in social work, I still didn't think I was going to be a therapist. I still didn't want to be a therapist.
What were you thinking you were going to be then?
I was working in welfare. I was working for the government, and so I just thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my master's degree and just kind of rise up through the ranks there professionally, but I really had no desire to be in therapy. And I ended up working in a hospital setting. I left the state left the government job and moved over to a hospital setting, a private insurance company, in fact, that I work for. And I did what's called medical social work, which means that you're seeing people who are coming in from all walks of life and you never know what you're going to get. And my boss came in and she said, you need to start doing some therapeutic work. You need to start doing this. And I said, I don't want to be a therapist. And she said, you need to do this. And so she pushed me, I would like to say gently, but it wasn't gently. She pushed me into it.
I always
loved it.
The gentle pushes from those. Sometimes they're needed, and they help so much.
Yes, completely.
See, that's kind of crazy to me because it's like she obviously saw something in you that was like, hey, this is a good path for you to be on. Right. I don't even know what I would look for somebody in a therapist.
I think that one of the instinctive things that I have that most therapists have is the ability to establish rapport, the ability for people to very quickly move in and trust you and be able to sit with you and talk to you about their most vulnerable parts.
Have you ever done cells?
A little bit, yes.
That sounds like sales.
Sounds
like sales.
Yeah,
No, that's awesome.
That's such a crucial part of the whole thing,
Right.
for sure, is being able to sit down with somebody. Because I mean, I've done a couple of therapy sessions, and it's always a little bit awkward at first when you know, I've read up on this person, but I've never actually seen this person in real life. And then I sit down and I'm like, I'm just gonna spill my whole life to you really quick.
Well, yeah, I think when you're like working with a counselor, like you need to feel super comfortable. Like you're about ready to open up like some deep, dark shit.
Deep stuff.
And that can be very,
It's scary.
daunting.
Yes.
That's a daunting thing. So
Yes.
the ability to establish rapport and, and that trust really quickly is a skill that I think is very underutilized, especially in today's like climate with people on their phones all the times, and especially our generation and
Right.
younger,
Right.
like their social skills are kind of weird. And even when I meet people at networking events or things like that, they can't maintain eye contact. They don't know how to shake your hand right. It feels like a dead fish and things like that. But anyways,
Interesting.
getting off topic. So, okay. So what brought you to Utah?
My husband, my husband was having health problems, and in the Central Valley of California, it has one of the worst air qualities in the nation, and 24/7, it just doesn't go away. And so his physicians said, you need to move. And we had family that was here in Utah, and so we decided to move up here. So he moved first. He obtained a position with the state, and he moved about a month ahead of the family, and then we held back, and we got everything done there, and then we moved.
Nice.
That's awesome.
How long ago was this?
9 years ago now.
Gotcha.
Wow.
So you're almost a full-blown like Utah
We're
at this
almost
point.
a Utah.
Almost. You drink soda with milk in it yet, or cream?
Not quite.
Okay, so
We're
not
not
quite
there.
there.
Fry sauce with every single
Fry
meal.
sauce with every meal. Well, welcome to Utah, I guess. But tell us about your business now. Let's kind of move into
Sure.
this. How did your business come to be? How did you get into that? How did you know that's what you were going to start?
Right. Well, I was working as a medical social worker up at Huntsman Cancer Hospital. I was part of the neuro-oncology team.
Wow.
And it was a magical experience, incredible, very humbling to work with the people
bet.
up there. But the commute was difficult. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I realized pretty quickly that I needed a little bit more freedom in my schedule to be able to break away and go attend things for my kids, or if they're sick, things like that, be able to really be centered and aligned with my values of wanting to serve my family, but also wanting to have a career. So I opened a New View Counseling. It was just me. I was in a very little office, about the size of the room that we're in now, maybe a little bit smaller.
Wow.
And started putting my name out there and started seeing clients. And it very quickly grew. And so I moved from that location to a bigger office, and it just continued to grow. And about 3 years into it is when I realized that I was turning people away because I couldn't serve that many people.
You were too busy.
Were you lone soldier all 3 years?
I was.
Wow.
I was. Within about, I think about 6 months, I quit my full-time job. And so I moved, I just was doing
That's
this
a big leap.
exclusively. It was a big leap. It was risky, but we were ready to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Family first.
Us
right.
being a marketing company, it always begs the question, like, how were you getting your leads? Like, how are
Right.
people finding you,
Right.
being brand new and having your own practice? Like, how did people find you?
So one of my specializations is working with individuals on the autism spectrum, and there's not that many of us. So putting myself out there, I utilize Psychology Today, which is a pretty strong website. I think it's the #1 ranked website when you're looking for a therapist. So
Psychology Today.
psychologytoday.com. Yeah, we're plugging it.
Yeah, exactly.
You've heard it there. We'll link it in the description.
Yes.
But I put myself out there on that. I registered, or you have to become credentialed with insurance companies if you're going to take insurance. So I became credentialed with a couple of solid insurance companies, and it just took off. The need was there, and then very quickly it becomes word of mouth, where people say, you need to go see this person.
Yeah.
So about 3 years in is when I was turning people away, and I also work with couples. I do a lot of relationship work, and oftentimes in relationship work, one or both of the partners need their own individual therapist. And when you're working with couples, you don't see them as individuals as well. That's just too biased. So I was referring out, but I didn't really have good solid sources to refer out to. So I thought, let's hire someone. So I hired our first clinician, and I would refer then to her. And so she began to pick up the clients that were coming to me initially that I couldn't see. And it just grew from there. In fact, she's still with me.
Wow.
Gotcha.
At a new view right now, seeing like where you were just being by yourself for 3 years and then hiring that first one, what does your practice look like now?
It's grown exponentially.
I bet.
Yeah, I went from, oh my goodness, I think that initial office was probably about 120 square feet. And I went from that to now we have 7,000 square feet.
Oh.
So a little bit different.
Yeah.
A little bit more to manage.
Yeah. How many therapists?
We have 13 therapists. We also have a med management provider, so we have a nurse practitioner as well. And we have a great, thriving practice.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
One of the things that makes me want to ask Ho, I don't know about you, is the growing pains of growing a business. You know, like going through all that, hiring the right people, and finding new spot for business, and finding all those things.
Right.
What have been some of your biggest growing pains that you've experienced at a new view?
What's the most difficult part from going from single solo writer
125 square feet
Right.
office
to
7,000,
7,000,
12 clinicians.
Right. I think what weighs on me is the responsibility of it. When you know that it's not just your family that's depending upon you, but there are, with our office staff, I think we have 16, 17 employees. Their families are depending upon us.
Mm-hmm.
They're depending upon me to make the right decisions. And I often tell my staff that it's not just about making the decision for here and now, but my job is to make sure that a New View counseling is sustainable. My job is to make sure that 10 years down the line, people still have jobs, and 20, 30 years down the line, people are still able to get services.
Wow.
Gotcha.
What's your favorite part about what you do?
Serving people.
Serving people?
100%.
I had to ask it. I'm like, I got to know what makes her tick, that serving people.
So I was going to ask about the relationship. How is that like a really popular one? The relationship therapy?
It is. Unfortunately, I think people wait too late. I often use the analogy about driving a car. You don't wait until the check engine light is on to go get it serviced. You need to.
Do we?
Well, you shouldn't.
Oh, okay. You're right.
But you should be.
You're
Should be, checking your tires and checking your oil and things like that.
I'm that guy.
At least that's what they say.
I just keep driving till hopefully it turns off. It's
I think it was just this is
And
cool.
and that's how some people do relationships.
And then someone gets
I can see that. I can totally see how
And then
that. And I
someone-
think that's very valuable what you just said. Honestly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Koa.
Well, I was curious as far as like seeing those signs. Like, what are some of the signs that you should look for before you start looking for actual help? Like, is there
Right.
certain things that
That's a great
that
question.
trigger
Right.
before you actually start looking for help?
Sure. So one of the foundational elements that needs to be in a relationship that really is the make or break is, do I like this person? And if I don't like this person, if my dislike is starting to increase, then what happens is I start to get resentful of them. And as soon as resentment comes in, it really is a downhill slide from there. So it's super important to continue to grow together, learn new things about each other, always remain curious. If you're starting to, in your relationship, feel like it's monotonous, just kind of routine, and it's getting a little boring, and maybe I'm really upset now that they leave their socks on the floor, whereas before I just didn't care.
Yeah, it's just a sock.
Right. It's time to revive it. It's time to do some work.
And don't you do the John Gottman method?
We do.
Is that
Yes.
what you guys do?
Yes.
And
Elaborate on that. I don't know what that is.
The only thing that I really know about John Gottman, I think I read his book. I was in counseling. I'm divorced, so it works so well. I was in marriage counseling a long time ago. But anyways, one of the things that I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know, but he did like 40 years of experience doing like these tests, almost like these long-term tests. But he would have these couples come to like this specific house where he had cameras in it. And one of the very first things that if the therapists and the doctors saw is that resentment, what you were talking about. And that's one of like the number one indicator of like them not working out is that. Is that correct? That's so interesting.
Resentment.
Yeah, resentment.
Got you. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of therapy, in fact, all of the therapy that we do is what's called evidence-based, which means that it has been reviewed over and over again through a really rigorous scientific method to make sure that it works. So we're not just, as therapists, we're not just sitting there giving advice. It is very much scientifically driven, and it's based upon sound theories that we have that tell us a little bit more about individual behavior.
That's super fascinating. I'm not going to lie. That's cool.
Is that what you mostly deal with right now is relationship stuff? Or what do you say your workload is as being a counselor?
What's the range? Like, I know there's anywhere
that.
from drug abuse to relationships to like OCD. Like, there's so many different things that you can go into therapy for.
Well, our practice covers just about everything. The only thing that we don't treat is if they're coming in for their principal reason is that they are domestic violence offender or a sexual offender. We don't treat things like that, or substance use being the primary issue. Gotcha. But oftentimes the primary issue is something like anxiety or depression or trauma in their past, and those are things that we definitely treat. For me personally, my focus really is on autism, and so while I see other individuals as well, I like to keep my hand in a lot of different things. I do quite a bit of work with individuals and couples where one of them is neurodivergent and one of them is neurotypical, which is always really fascinating.
That's like a huge term on TikTok these days and social media in general is neurodivergent. Like everyone is like really talking about that right now, which I think is a good thing because like mental health is having kind of like this uprise of awareness and people actually talking about it now, which is really interesting. But neurodivergent, you'll see so many TikToks or social media posts about that stuff lately. Which I think is a great thing. But
it's awareness.
So with the new view, tell us. Obviously, you said it was word of mouth now, but now as a bigger practice, what are you guys doing? Or is it still mostly word of mouth? Is it referrals from other places that are outsourcing their stuff? Is that how mostly you get your clients?
We get our referrals from a variety of sources, so we still utilize psychology today. All of our therapists have their own individual profiles, so we don't just profile as a group, we profile individually. So I think that's something strategically that we have set out to do to make sure that we're not just marketing ourselves as a New View Counseling, but we want each individual therapist to be able to be marketed as well. Because when a client is looking for therapy, they're not looking for an agency. They're looking for a personal relationship with a therapist. And so we're really, we just really try to emphasize that when we do our marketing. We are also credentialed with nearly every insurance company that is out there. So anybody can access their mental health benefits through their insurance, and they can find us that way.
Yeah, it's probably a huge barrier.
Right.
One of the things that with the pandemic and this crazy stuff that's been going on and people working at home and working in each other's space and stuff, have you seen like an uprise in patients and stuff?
Ooh, that's actually a great question. Yeah. What has it been like?
Like what's that effect?
Post-COVID versus pre-COVID?
During COVID. What has that been like at the center?
You know, I think what we're seeing and what we're going to continue to see probably for the next 12 to 18 months is an increase in the need for mental health care with people having experienced losses through COVID. Not just the loss of life, but the loss of the way of life, what they were doing
how it used
in
to
their
be.
life. Right.
And almost feel like you're in a void right now. Like you just are in a limbo from what you used to be and what like is now.
People aren't really sure whether to commit to moving forward because there's so much insecurity in our world right now about what are we doing? Is it going to come back? Are we going to have something new that hits us?
Well, I know personally, like when I don't have my routine, like I feel so off.
Right.
Like when I'm not like, okay, get up, do this, go there. And I can't imagine having, like a traditional job, like office job where one day you're going in and then you don't go in for 9 months to a year or over a year, and then you get to go back, and then it's like, oh man.
It's like, do I even want to go back?
Right.
There's so many different variables. I mean, for me, it's interesting. I just went out for like one of the first times a couple weekends ago, and it was like, I don't remember how to act around people or in this like large of a
You have to
group
wear
because
shoes as opposed to slippers.
yes, and it's just like everything is so different. Just
put
like
on pants
basic
today.
interactions are different, and
Exactly.
it's just crazy what we've all gone through.
The one thing from COVID and the pandemic that I absolutely like hate right now is like Zoom calls. Like Zoom meetings and Zoom
Yes.
calls, like I just stay in them. I'd never want to meet in person. I never want to meet online. I only want to meet in person. And this is part of the reason that we only do in person like podcasts.
Right.
There's a lot of podcasts out there that will do like, oh, let's do a Zoom meeting and we'll record it. Like all power to them. I can't do it. The pandemic ruined Morgan with meetings. So
Right.
Well, I was actually going to ask you this. That kind of leads into what I was going to say. Because there's a lot of people the opposite of you that are only about Zoom calls now and are only about virtual.
And I fight them every day.
And in my life right now, it's funny because going back to kind of tech, I'm into this NFT right now, and it's all about mental health. And one of the perks with the NFT is they have created this app, and you get 24/7 access to a therapist. And so I was wondering, like, looking at the future, do you guys offer some service like that? Would you ever? Is that something you guys would ever be open to doing? Like having
that's
a
getting more
having a
popular,
virtual side of your company.
Like I think there's that company called BetterHelp, and there's these other places that are doing that like virtual texting or even video call therapy.
When COVID hit, we had to pivot, and so we had to move to a telehealth model, and so we did it. It's not our favorite.
I can see it being difficult.
Again, therapy is based on relationship. And relationship, there's a theory out there called polyvagal theory. And not to get too nerdy with it, but polyvagal theory basically says that neurologically, as the three of us are sitting here right now, we're picking up on a vibe that is telling each other, are we safe or do we have something to worry about? Mm-hmm. And it's a little trickier to do that when you don't see the whole person, when you see them from here up.
The body language.
Right.
Yeah, like micro expressions.
Yes.
Dr. Ekman stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. So when you're doing a telehealth session, it can be tricky to be picking up on all of those things. In addition, it's difficult oftentimes to assess for safety, to know, is this person in a private space? Do they have someone listening in
behind
on the
telling
other
them
side
to
of the door?
say something?
Yeah,
very
yeah.
valid. That's all very, very
They don't
valid.
want to be open because they might be overheard.
Right. I mean, we've had people, try to have a session while they were walking through Home Depot. It's like, no, we're not doing that. So we had to set up really clear boundaries.
These are the rules.
About doing it, that we are here to keep you safe, even though maybe you aren't so concerned about your emotional safety, we are. And so we've had to do a lot of education around how we do telehealth. So our policy is we do not ever do initial sessions by telehealth. We have them come in, and then the therapist and the client decide together whether that's going to be the best setup for the client going forward to do telehealth or stay in person.
I was going to ask you a question and say Kathrine, but is it Dr. Kathrine? Okay, Kathrine. I feel like I was like, am I being disrespectful to just be like, hey, Kathrine? I lost my train of thought. Sorry, Kathrine. Oh, yeah. Back to your business and everything. With you being the clinical director there and the owner, I know we're talking a lot about like the therapy stuff and the telehealth stuff and those type of things. Do you look at yourself more as like a businesswoman or as like a therapist? Like,
great question. I think right now, it is probably about 70% businesswoman and 30% therapist.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I've had to shift. So I will always remain a therapist. I really want to stay in the trenches. Mm-hmm. And I think that just really says something to my team. I wouldn't expect them to move through that and not have me in it with them.
Yeah.
So I'll always do that, but there are only so many people that can operate my business the way it needs to be operated, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So it requires me to be very present. I make the decisions as far as hiring. My husband is co-owner now with it, and so he stands beside me, and we make those decisions together as far as hiring and terminating and moving through the process of how we're going to continue to grow the business.
I think that's great that you even stay any percent in the trenches because it shows a lot of leadership to your team.
Right.
But like you were saying earlier, where it's like, hey, you want to make something that's sustainable for 10 plus years. Right. you have to have that business side in order for that to be even possible.
Absolutely. So. I read a book years ago about servant leadership, and it was talking about Lee Iacocca. Now I'm going to totally date myself here, but we're going back to Chrysler days.
Okay.
And what he did to try to rebuild this company is he basically said, I'm not going to take salary. And we've heard of other CEOs that do this. I'm not going to take salary. I'm going to get in the trenches with you, and I'm going to work alongside you. And it boosts the morale. It keeps your employees feeling like that you're one of us. We're not on a hierarchy. I'm above you, but we're in this together, which is why it's so important as we hire to make sure that we're hiring people who are aligned with the mission of the agency and not trying to just go and do their own thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I bet you hiring is probably super difficult.
It's been really tricky, especially through COVID. It's definitely shifted to try to find people who are looking for the same thing that we are.
Mm. How we're set up here, and maybe your husband has a specific role in your business, but how we're set up here, when we first started, I said, Koa, you do all the fulfillment, you deal with the customers, like once they're on with us, and I'll do all the front end stuff and like the business stuff, right? So like we have like fulfillment and sales, and that's how we went in together. That being said, what's your favorite part of your business, or what's that part of business that you're just like, I hate doing that? That's like, you do that, husband, or you do that, someone else.
Right. So he manages most of the HR. So he manages onboarding, getting all of those things together, the paperwork and things like that. It's funny because I never thought of myself as a math person, but I love statistics. I love the analytics of it.
It's the best.
It's the best.
You speak in my language. I love analytics. Being able to like project where things are going to go, be able to see where things are messing up.
Yes.
Like that's super nerdy, but it's so fun to watch. It's like a game. It's literally like a game.
That was like the one thing that was the hardest for me, is doing like cash flow and spreadsheets and accounting. It's like a foreign language to me and that stuff. But that's why we use Brad with Green Makers.
I know. I think it's fun. I think it's literally turned into a game for me, where it's like, okay, let's see how well we can optimize all of our things that we're going, all of the little moving parts that we're doing to get that ultimate outcome.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know, I just nerd out over analytics, Google Analytics specifically.
Well, it's incredible because I really do attribute the growth of our company to me doing that work. We don't make decisions blind. We make decisions very much based upon trends and then projecting things down the line. And not just for our business, but looking at the economy as a whole.
You're speaking our language over here.
Literally,
that's exactly what we do. We look at trends and we project to see like how we can help our customers.
We see which ones are getting the interaction. You never make a blind guess at what you're doing. It's always strategical.
Very calculated, right.
So what's next for A New View? You've gotten this far. Is it like total, U.S. domination? Is it total Utah domination? Or like, what are your big aspirations? What's next for you?
We have plans for expansion. We have plans for expansion into other communities. Initially, we had a plan for expanding outside of Utah, and then COVID hit.
Oh.
And so we're feeling like right now the most predominant need is within our state, and that's where we can serve people the best. So that's what we're looking ahead to.
Are you looking for like multiple? Do you just have the one location?
We do.
Mm-hmm. Are you looking to get more locations in Utah?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the plan.
Yes.
So more locations in Utah.
Right.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, where is this location?
We are in Riverton right now.
Nice. Very cool.
Yes. We love the community in Riverton. They've been amazing.
Yes. I'm like, I picked up these that you're from South Jordan. That's exactly where pride and joy, pick an axe, Bingham for life.
Yes.
Like that's I love that area. So that's cool you're out there helping people out there.
Well, the last thing that kind of to bring this all together is one last question, and then I'll roll out the red carpet for you to tell where people can find you and things like that. Is with everything going on in the world right now, the craziness, and you being a therapist and working with this type of stuff, Koa kind of touched on it earlier, but I was waiting for the end to say it, is what are some of those things that if our listeners are working now, our listeners are mostly like CEOs, business owners, and things like that. They deal with a lot of work stress. I know they are. What are some maybe thoughts or things that they can do to get better or to get help? Like, how do you start that journey? And what's some like advice for them? Maybe.
Right. Well, I think the best advice is don't wait. Don't wait. Just reach out for the help. I was taught by a boss years ago that you don't want to be in life or in your job, you don't want to be in the boat by yourself. At some point, it's going to take on water. And isn't it so much better if you've got somebody else to help bail you out? And that is the role oftentimes of a therapist, is we get in it with you. We'll sit there, we'll hold space for you. Sometimes it's just about processing, but sometimes it's about making improvements in your life, changing the way you do relationships or changing the way you live. And there's always good things that come from therapy.
Yeah, I want to kind of voice that. Mental health is really big for me. I've been through like a lot. I've been through like counseling and therapy, couples therapy even. One of the things being like a macho man, CEO, masculine dude, is I always thought there was like shameful before I started.
Right,
and I just want to say to our listeners too, like if you struggle with mental health, like there's no shame in it. Get the help that you need. And I've taken a lot of those skills that I've learned and applied them in my life. Not only like the skills, but the introspective aspect of it, of like, oh, this is how Morgan ticks. Like this is what
You've learned about yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the biggest thing I learned is honestly, don't wait until it's bad.
Right.
Don't wait for that check engine.
Don't wait for that check engine light. I think that hit home for
Change
me.
your oil.
And I think everybody should. That could be valuable for everybody.
Right.
So.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Now, tell everyone or tell our guests like where they can find you, maybe your website, or if you're active on social media, where can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So we are located in Riverton, and our phone number is 801-209-9797. They can reach out through telephone, through also text. They can also go to our website, which is anewviewcounseling.net, and they can find us there and learn a little bit more about what we do and the individual therapists that we have.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being our guest today. Thank you guys. We are so excited for our guests coming up. We're doing this whole new series of successful women in business in Utah. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of that. And where can they find us, Goa?
You guys can always catch these podcasts on our lovely website, as well as YouTube is where you can catch the video. And then they'll be streamed on all major streaming networks, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Till next time, guys. Thanks.
See ya.